to the Paranormal Patio Podcast. Pull up a chair.
Hey, welcome back to Paranormal Patio. As always, I'm Jason. This is actually a Paranormal Garage episode because it's freezing cold outside, and somehow these two guys from Kentucky have convinced me to go out into the elements and talk to them tonight. And let me tell you something. I'm excited. I'm grateful. And I can't wait to hear what Nathan, Isaac, and Darian West have to say. These are the Penny Royal podcast guys, and I've been totally hyping them up every chance I get. How you guys doing tonight?
We're great, man. We're great. Thanks for having us on the show. Like, I'm super excited to talk to you. So
it's mutual. So for those that do not know about the Penny Royal podcast, I'm going to ask you the impossible to tell the entire story in 5 minutes.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
No, take as long as you need.
Yeah. I'll give an abridged version. Obviously we've talked. The story's been told many, many times. We have a studio, Darian and I do, above Jarfly Brewing, which is strange in and of itself because, the cult of Pan, the symbol for the cult of Pan was a cicada, which is a jarfly, right? Which is a strange thing that we found out after we were already working on the show,
Yeah.
But we have a studio up there, and I also do, I have a YouTube series, channel that's called Summer Sessions, and we've worked with a lot of bands from all over the country. They come and we shoot, live music sessions, kind of music videos with people. And everybody that has set foot through those doors for the last 2 years has heard the story, and we've told it over and over. Because, part of it too is, we love having these bands come, but to have them, here and to, I've always want to make them feel the same magic that I feel for this place. That this is this like super mysterious, super strange, super magical place. And, so we always try to tell this story. But it's obviously gotten more and more complex as things have progressed. And again, it's still playing out, and still, we didn't put a lot of the other things that have happened to us that were a part of all of this, the entire investigation, because we just couldn't fit it in the first season. So, but a quick rundown is that, Darian and I were investigating, a couple of, murders, disappearances, that were really, crazy, that happened in 1994, here in Somerset. Dateline, NBC's even done a special about it. They came in 2019 to do a 25-year anniversary, and thing about the deaths. And so those were like super violent. There was a lot of urban legends and stories attached to those murders, especially that they involved a sex cult that was here, here in Pulaski County, that all of these powerful people were a part of. And definitely, like, when we first started looking at it, I think Darian would agree, right, that we were kind of scared once we dug deeper into that,
Yeah, as we started asking, like, locals questions, like, because I'm not from Somerset, and Nathan isn't either. And so, like, as we started asking people questions, we started bumping into weird resistances that we kind of misread, and it was kind of scary at the beginning, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Like, and then, did we really think there was a cult? I didn't really think so. But we'd heard all these stories about people dressing up in robes at these parties. And later we found out that really those stories we were hearing were a series of different things that had happened that sort of existed in the the cultural memory of the community, and people were blending them all into one story. But actually, it was like a series of different murders and different stories about some sex parties and other things that all got thrown together. So we did figure that out. But at no point did we set out to, figure out the murders or find out anything. It was more that something like that could have happened here and why it happened here. And so that was sort of the gateway entrance into looking into the town. And like Darren said, neither one of us are from here. I'd done previous research on the Kentucky anomaly. That I'm a huge fan of. I'm always collecting stories of high strangeness and folklore and weird folklore. I love weird folklore, and I definitely had heard that Sedona was a major UFO hotspot, and that there was this spike of geomagnetic energy there. And I've told this a lot, and we mentioned the show, but I started looking at the satellite images of where these spikes were, and it turned out that Pulaski County is right at the heart of what NASA calls the Kentucky anomaly, and it's the largest spike of geomagnetic energy in the Western Hemisphere. And so, knowing about all the murders, and we were hearing all kinds of stories of, UFO sightings and dogmen sightings and tons of Bigfoot shit, just weird phenomena. And Darian and I are both really good friends with Dan Dutton. And Dan was telling us all these stories of things that happened, in that area of the county near Highway 39. And that really set us off thinking, well, is it possible that this geomagnetic energy was affecting people? Because that's sort of the tagline of the show is, the magic and mystery of place. So it's this relationship of, does a place shape the people, or, do the people shape the place or define the place? And really that's a question of, how does the folklore of a place affect both the people and that place? And so we were looking at that and wondering, is there an effect from the geomagnetic energy? And Darian was the one that found just this insane history of violence here.
Oh, yeah. When we dug into I guess if you're not from a place that has epic levels of violence or poverty, it may be kind of surprising, but the history of violence in Somerset goes way, way back so far, and we were trying to figure out how it was seen from the outside, to get a scale, to get a kind of an idea of the scale of it. And so we started looking into the Cincinnati newspapers and seeing how they were reporting violence in Kentucky in general. And we found, man, it goes so far back. Even in the late 1800s, there are just headlines about Somerset's reign of terror, and all of it's like the 10th murder in 7 days or something. And it's all over the Cincinnati newspapers early on, at the turn of the century.
Tell him about the dude that was found with the barbed wire.
Yeah, that was in the 1940s. A guy had been driven down, I think from Cleveland. I think he worked at a factory in Cleveland. I think he even worked his shift. Then I think he was driven by two men in a car from Cleveland to Somerset and hung from a tree with barbed wire. They found his body, and there was a guy that it was the only reason it was known locally. There was only one witness, a guy who had claimed to have been with two people who had killed him, and he had ended up with some girls later and told a story that ended up to the police. But yeah, that's a weird story too, because it didn't seem connected at all to anything local other than it was with him.
Yeah, and then there was the story too of what was it? They tried to poison those children in the school.
Yeah, they poisoned it with arsenic or
yeah, an entire classroom of children near this place called Short Creek. It was Short Creek, right?
Short Creek Elementary. That's what it was. Yeah.
Yeah. And which is a strange place. Short Creek is the shortest river,
it's a flowing body of water in the United States or so. I don't know.
But so we found all this stuff about how violent the town was. Even the most famous sheriff here, who was sort of this like king-like figure, Sammy Catron. He was assassinated at a fish fry while he was putting 2 fucking apple pies on top of his patrol car. He gets killed, and he was an interesting character too because he flew around in a helicopter. He didn't drive his patrol car; he flew around in a helicopter. They even had little toy helicopters at the grocery stores. They sold the helicopter as toys, but you could also ride on it by putting a quarter in the machine. Right? It's available, right? It's available actually down at at one of the antique malls, and we've been, we've almost bought it a couple of times, but I don't want to be morbid, you know what I mean? So, and honestly, like the murder of Sammy Catron, like reading about that, he was also the person that investigated those 2 really, really brutal murders and lost the evidence. The case was never solved because of his involvement. We had heard, people with allegations, as you would, that he was part of the, the sex cult, and the mayor, and all these different people, but there wasn't any truth to any of that stuff. But there were stranger things, and things that we will never talk about that we found, But seeing him, like the Sammy Catron thing, the other murders, all these disappearances, I'm a big fan of the Empire of the Wheel series by Walter Bosley and Richard Spence. And seeing the things that were happening here in Somerset, and then having read that book, I started to wonder, well, is it possible that there could be some weird ritual working? And that these murders, these really strange murders, are somehow connected. What if there is some group here? What if what if there really are robed figures, practicing sex magic or doing something strange, and that this is all a part of that. And so that's where we really started looking into some of that stuff. We'd heard from people, there were stories from people that said they were part of a cult here in town. And obviously in the 3rd episode we talked to Pamela. And, she's telling us that there's definitely a cult here, and the whole town's involved, and all these people are in the cult. And that they're taking children from 4 states, and they're going to something and doing these things. And I was still kind of like, I don't know, I definitely believe that she experienced some type of trauma, but I still wasn't sold at that point that anything, that there really were, that farmers and, local attorneys here were like going out and reading, rituals to Cthulhu kind of thing. Or
right,
like fucking witch man, like I was like, I don't see, I won't say any names, but you talk to these dudes, it's like these dudes they don't give a shit about magic, they're not doing a ritual work. They might be all about drugs and sex, and some of it may be underage stuff, but like I don't see the magic element of it, the ritualism element. But that's when, that's when Greg shows up with Connor and Carl. And they'd known Kyle Cadell, who runs the Paranormal Museum here in town. Kyle had met them at conventions, and so they were filming. We didn't know that they were filming for the 2nd season of Hellier, and we were familiar with Hellier. I mean, I was a fan. I'd watched the 1st season, but whenever they came back, they came to Kyle's museum, talked to him a little bit. And then they came back through a couple of weeks later and wanted to interview him and get some local stories. But we didn't know Somerset was the focus of it. And they'd asked him, is there anybody else that you want to talk to? And or that we should talk to that has some stories. And he recommended me. That's when they interviewed me. And so I'm telling them all the paranormal stuff, and Greg says, well, so what do you think's happening here? And I said, well, let me tell you the crime stuff, too, because I think it's related somehow. And so I tell him all these stories about the murders, the disappearances, the sheriff being assassinated, the sex cult, and they, like Greg, kind of freaked out, you know? And then he told us about the Amy emails. And I don't think he would have ever, except that what I was telling him was exactly what Amy and Hillier had described to him in those emails.
It's my favorite part of season 2 because you can see the look on his face and the look on your face when you both realize, holy shit, this is real.
Well, I mean, dude, that was the first time that I really was like, oh fuck, like what if we've poked our nose in the wrong thing, you know? And they left, you know, they told us all that. He didn't tell us the name of the woman, but he just told us what she alleged in the emails. And I mean, they left, and I called. Darian wasn't there, but remember, man, I called you, and I was like, "Oh fuck, dude."
Well, I was talking to Daniel. I think Daniel was there. I think I was in New York, and Daniel was there. I think, and I was going back and forth through him. And I remember his reaction to the overall reaction when the cult thing came out was, "This has gone a little too far." Like it was like kind of scary.
Yeah. Daniel owns the bar, you know, downstairs, and so, and he's been a bit, you know, part of the production too, and so, yeah, everybody freaked out. Kyle was there, and we were all just looking at each other like, oh shit. So they leave, and I'm like, we should back off. What if there really is a cult? You know, what if this is real? If some things are happening, and we did, but, obviously we're, you know, hopefully no. Nothing bad happens. You know, curiosity just gets the better of you, you know, and we started, you know, then I was like, man, well, let's look. Is this a real thing? But it really didn't ramp up again. You know, things definitely got weird after that. And I started asking different kinds of questions to people we were interviewing, right? Because now I really wanted to know, is there a cult? You know, and I was taking it seriously. We talked to Pamela again, but we're finding out some more stuff. But that's definitely when we figured out that the stories we were hearing about the murders and all the stuff were a series of different stories that were sort of meshed together. And we kind of pulled those apart to see the different strands of it. But it was when the Hellier season 2 came out on November the 29th, and I saw that, you know, obviously I jumped to my episode just to see, you know, again, it's always saying to, you know, to see whether or not I look like a crazy person talking about all this stuff. And, it's named The Secret Commonwealth. And that's the name of artist Dan Dutton, who's in the 4th episode of Pennyroyal. But he's throughout the series. Obviously, Dan's a major part of this entire mystery that we've sort of gotten involved in. But Dan and I were working on a film, still are working on this film, where we are, it's about his opera, The Faun, which is about Pan and these two nymphs. And his most famous works from the 90s, sort of his opus, and Dan's a really famous artist. His works, a whole wing of the White House was just his works. You know, there are all kinds of weird stuff, you know. And he had The Faun. We were trying to recreate it because he had told me this insane story about this encounter that he had in Elkhorn City, which is, you know, it's right where Breaks Interstate Park is, you know, where, you know, Kentucky and West Virginia and Virginia all sort of meet, you know, the most extreme southeastern point. And he had this crazy liminal experience where he thought he encountered the archetype of Pan. And he was working on the opera at the time, but he had this just incredible experience. And he told it to me one afternoon that we were having lunch together, and I was just like, we've got to make this into a documentary, and we've got to restage The Faun, find new actor for The Faun, new actresses for the nymphs, and then go to Elkhorn City, go to Breaks Interstate Park, and where this encounter happened, and recreate the opera in the woods there to see if we can trigger another encounter with the archetype of Pan. So in a sense, go to Elkhorn City and summon Pan. Right. And then, so the 8th episode is named Secret Commonwealth, which is the name of Dan's, like I was saying, his opus, his 4-part opera series is called The Secret Commonwealth. So that was strange. And then the finale of Hellier, the fact that it was the Night of Pan, and they perform a ritual to summon Pan here in Somerset. I texted Greg immediately and was like, dude, Dan and I are going to Elkhorn City for this film to do basically a ritual to summon Pan. And see, what most people don't realize is that Hellier is a suburb of Elkhorn City. So they were literally coming from there to here to do a ritual to Pan, and we were going there. There were too many things. The fact that the rebirth of Pan and just all of those elements were in the 2nd season of Hellier. It was undeniable that there was something, that there was some weird structure of things, right? Some strange thing was playing out. Because we were already looking at all this stuff. I was already working with Dan, and then we intersect with Greg and Dana and the whole team, and it was just too incredible. That's when, so that by itself was like, this is fucking strange. This is weird. But then the show comes out, we hear the entire Amy interview, we actually get to hear it. We get to see all the emails, just Greg telling us kind of cursory what was happening with them. And that's when Kyle ran into Pamela and asked her again and mentioned some words like slough and some things, and she freaked out and told him, he was like, where was this happening? Where were these rituals? Where was this group meeting? And that's when she gave him sort of the piece of information that totally took this to a whole nother level. And that's when it was the Mount Victory Mine. And we were all like, remember Darian? We were like, there are no mines here.
Yeah, we had no idea. This was such a rabbit hole of weirdness. God. Yeah, this isn't like the part of Kentucky you would associate with coal mining either, like Nathan's saying. I had no idea there was a mine there. We had never heard of it, and never heard of any of the people that were ever involved in it, I don't think. Locally, you don't talk to anyone that knew any of this.
Yeah, no one remembers any of this stuff happening. But so we started looking for the Mount Victory Mine, and that's when I think Kyle was the one that found. Was it you or was it Kyle that found the New York Times article? I think it was.
I think it was
right?
Kyle found that.
But so Kyle finds this New York Times article that says that there was a Mount Victory Coal Company, and it was owned by Lester Burns, which if you listen to Pennyroyal in the 3rd episode, Dark and Bloody Ground, we talk about Lester Burns because he was this, infamous attorney in Kentucky, larger than life figure who was involved in a ton of different crazy stuff, a lot of corruption stuff, but just wild shit. And they wrote a book about him called Dark and Bloody Ground. And that's where the name of that episode is taken from. But ultimately, you find out that Lester Burns owned this mine that this woman's telling us this cult was practicing black magic at. And he sells the mine to this guy that the New York Times article and every newspaper in America referred to him this way. They called him Mr. X. And his name was Alexander Katerma. And this guy no one knew where he came from. There were stories and rumors about his early life, but no one knows for certain. His family didn't know. His attorneys didn't know. No one knew really where he came from. But in 1951, he comes to the U.S. and becomes one of the richest men in America, and proceeds to commit the largest stock fraud in U.S. history, and tries to overthrow the Dominican Republic, and he's a co-conspirator in the JFK assassination. And a lot of people believe that a lot of researchers believe he was a ex-Nazi intelligence agent brought over through the Galen organization. It was kind of like Project Paperclip, but for Nazi spies. And so we're seeing that this guy, this Mr. X, this international man of mystery, bought them for $15 million in 1975. That the firm in Lester Burns that this woman is saying this international black magic cult is meeting at and sacrificing children, right? And so then it was like, is what she's saying true? Because what are the odds that place would have it? She'd never heard of Gaterma. No one here in town's ever heard of Gaterma.
Right.
But this dude moved his entire financial empire here in 1975. And he lived here for 2 years, and then he was assassinated in 1977 flying from Somerset to New York City, which is a whole thing. And then, this is the 6th episode of the podcast, talks about this part of it. But it was another one of those things where it was like, what are the odds that this also is happening? Like, this is part of the history here. That this woman is saying, all these things about that this mine is where this cult was. Well, when we look at where the mine's located, we find out that it's right where Greg and Dana and the Hillier crew did the ritual to Pan. Because that whole area it's the Sloan's Valley cave system, and there are all these caves out there. And we just like, what are the odds that all of this is clustering there? And the Gaterma stuff was just incredible. And then Darian, when we thought we had found everything we could find on Gaterma, Darian finds out a whole new twist about who Lester Burns' business partner was.
Yeah, we were digging into, we thought we couldn't find anything else, and I think Nathan even mentioned that day. And then I was looking to see how the land transfer had happened or something, and I'd found that Lester Burns' business partner was Spiro Agnew, the Vice President of the United States at the time. And he had raised all this money through Nixon's campaigns and stuff. He'd or formed the connections that ultimately led to the acquisition of the money for the land. And it was, and even then, that amount is still so excessive for the amount of land it was. I mean, it wouldn't be worth that today for sure.
There's no way. Yeah. God, it's like. The place is blighted. I mean, this is so polluted. It's a nasty place. And the U.S. government took it over after he died, which is weird.
Yeah.
Which is, that's U.S. And there's a national forest adjacent to it, and it's not the Forestry Service. It's the U.S. government that owns it. So, I mean, that whole thing was super strange. I freaked out when Darian told me about the vice president. It was Spiro Agnew was his business partner. I was like, what? Yeah. This is here in Somerset? And so that was incredible. So the whole Gaterma discovery just threw everything, because it was like, we'd already been looking at all the murders, all the disappearances. That was strange enough. Then, Hellier comes, they sort of confirm some of that stuff. Then the show comes out, and it's so heavily connected to Pan. And here Dan and I are working on all this Pan stuff, and also going to do a ritual to invoke Pan. And then on top of that, finding the Gaterma stuff. We were just like, what in the world is going on? And then when we thought, at that point, I was like, this can't get any stranger. It's incredible. Also, and then the Kentucky anomaly. Underneath all of these things happening is the largest spike of geomagnetic energy in the Western Hemisphere, right? So it's like, is that drawing all of this stuff here somehow? Is that an underlying cause for this? So, in another weird moment where it's like, and I think I said to Darian, I think I said to you that what's going to happen next? Is it going to be like fucking Stranger Things? There's the Ultra stuff.
It took on that vibe pretty quick, though. Yeah.
Yeah, because in Lexington, which is like an hour and a half north of here, was one of the largest MK Ultra LSD farms, and that's all like public record. Like it's not a part of the conspiracy theory. Like when they did expose MK Ultra, they did admit, that Lexington was one of it was the most hit of LSD were administered in trials than anywhere else.
And the longest running trial too, I believe. The longest it was like 157 days or something that was tripping for that long. Yeah.
Wow.
And we'd come across these because when we started looking for more stuff about a cult, when we dug into the newspaper and you look for the term cult in Somerset, you find all these articles about a place called Oakwood, which was this experimental mental health facility that was built in 1973 here in Somerset. And within 6 weeks, an anonymous letter was written to the governor of Kentucky, the head of the state police, the sheriff here in town, and the mayor, alleging that a witch cult was operating at Oakwood on the third shift, that they were performing rituals in the tunnels underneath Oakwood, and that they were burning symbols into the backs of the residents, and that they were doing these seances to contact these weird things. And it's so like, we've never seen the letter, but the health commissioner came to Oakwood and he responded to the allegations point by point. And that's how we know you can glean what's been alleged, right?
I think he came to Oakwood the next day and delivered a speech or a question and answer thing to each shift. So it was that important. I think he was the director for the state, right?
It was the like state's director of health, like, under the governor, and. But when you look for cult, you find witch cult. You find all these articles because that's how the newspaper referred to it. It was witch cult. I'm like, well, this is weird. These people are telling us about a cult being here in town, and here the newspaper and the state of Kentucky is recognizing the possibility that there was a cult at Oakwood, right? And it's a really strange looking place. Look at it from Google Earth from above. It looks like a sigil of some sort. It's a strange looking place. We had heard, so most of the people that were there are lower functioning people, lower functioning patients. But one of the cottages we had heard was for ultra high functioning savants, right? Mm-hmm. Which was strange. But that was confirmed by like multiple people, including the son of the director that took over when they fired the original staff. And that was unsolicited, they were telling us about this. I'm like, oh yeah, there's, it was all low functioning except for this one. So, I talked to Marco Visconti about some of the pan stuff. He was working with us on the first, he's a ceremonial magician in England. Definitely, if you're into magic or want to learn more about magic, he has a Patreon that you should definitely check out. Marco's like, he's the most knowledgeable person I've ever met on the topic of magic. It's amazing. And just in terms of the history. Yeah. But, he had mentioned, I think we had brought up Oakwood to him, and he pointed out that Pan, that Sunernos, the horn god, is also the Oakwood king, right? And I was like, well, that's a strange connection. It's a strange thing. And, in light of all the Pan stuff. And so I was at Dan's and we were working on the Fawn film, and I was giving him an update on the research for Pennyroyal. And I mentioned that I thought he would get a kick out of hearing about Pan as the Oakwood king, and he had already heard it too. And so we started talking about that, and he said, "I've got an Oakwood story for you." And so that's what in the 7th episode of Pennyroyal that he that's the audio. I wish the audio was like crisper, but it was one of those moments where I hadn't really planned on recording anything. I was just recording because we were talking about a lot of like great stuff, but I wasn't paying attention to the audio. And then he starts telling me the story. His house is very wide open, but so there's a lot of sounds from the outside and everything. But it's one of those things where I was just like, this is absolutely one of the most incredibly weird things I've ever recorded, you know? And I was so glad I was recording it, you know?
That was one of my favorite parts of the whole series. That is just a fun, like, it's not funny, you know, in retrospect, but just to hear the story, I couldn't help but chuckle. And then he has that infectious laugh that when he's laughing, you can't help but laugh.
Right. And it sounds like this mischievous laugh, you know. It
does. It really does.
But so he proceeds to tell me that he was that he met a group, the Savants, and it turned out that they were possibly, we could definitely listen to the show for the whole story, but they were possibly these alien intelligences, these interdimensional intelligences that were inhabiting the bodies of these residents at Oakwood. And I was just like, oh my God, this is totally nuts. I mean, my heart was racing when he told me all that stuff, because I couldn't believe it was that he told me, you know, just things are already weird enough. And then to tell me that these things, that he doesn't have a memory of what happened during the encounter, but that was the most important day in his life. And that's when he created, you know, the secret Commonwealth and had the ideas for, you know, the Stone Man and the Fawn. Like, then I started thinking, did these things in 1979 that he encountered set in motion all of the events that are playing out right now, you know?
Yeah.
And so that became a part of it. And I was like, this is just too incredible. And then this isn't in the first season, but it'll be in the second season. We found out all this stuff about magical groups in Cincinnati, Ohio, right? That were performing, you know, tons of covens in Cincinnati, and over 100. But there was a group called the Bait Cabal, and they're this famous group of magicians that performed or that published the Cincinnati Journal of Ceremonial Magic. And, you know, like Marco said, you know, when we were talking to him about this, and I think this will be in the second season, you know, they changed modern magic. And we find out that they were coming to Pulaski County, coming to Somerset, and performing these rituals, time magic rituals. And like they're part of the Typhonian, you know, sort of current, the Kenneth Grant stuff, right? And so they believe that there are these old gods, these old ancient intelligences, these primordial intelligences that are trying to get back to the earth, you know, that they were banished from. And so a lot of their and it sounds totally crazy, you know, to talk about this.
Yeah.
You know, that these people really believed they were doing these magical rituals to stop the destruction of humanity. And they were coming to Pulaski County in the same area where that mine is, where Greg and Dana and the Hellier guys did the ritual to Pan. Like, that's the same place that they were coming to. We even found the location that they were coming to.
Wow.
And so, like, then you're like, like, they weren't sacrificing children. We found out that there's actually a ton of different magical groups that were drawn here because of the energy here to do these rituals. And they're not connected to each other. And I guess that's one of the weird things about this entire story, is that it's like all of these things stacked together. But, you know, I don't think that Alexander Gaterma was in the cult that Pam was talking about, right?
Right.
But he's still a part of the structure that all of this, whatever this thing is, they're all related, but they're not organized. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not like one group was doing all this magic and sacrificing children, and Guterman was part of it, and Oakwood was part of it, and, you know, all these things. But it's like, all of these things have been drawn together, and a lot of it only has context and only has meaning because of us and because we're looking at it right now. You know, and that's what I was trying to. That's the the finale of the first season of Pennyroll is really trying to communicate that sentiment, that somehow, you know, that mine would have only ever been a fucking hole in the ground forever, you know, to time. But now it's a mythic place because of this mystery and this story and this narrative that has emerged from us looking at all of this stuff. But not only is this story because of us, you know, and it continues, but again, it continues to play out. It's a strange thing. It's like if you take us out of the equation, you wouldn't be able to see all of this connected together, you know?
Yeah.
It's strange, man. I mean, that's in a nutshell. That's the Pennyroyal mystery. That's the first season of the podcast. And there's a lot more to it, but you know, I mean, that's the gist of it. And
it's bizarre that your intention was kind of to see the effect of a place on people, or the effect of people on a place, and it's these three outsiders that are finding this, and like you said, it's turned it into this big thing.
It's weird, man. I don't.
Yeah.
Well,
It feels a little bit like an escape room sometimes. That's what I thought.
I bet.
Yeah. Yeah. It feels.
That's what Darian always says. Well, you know, one of the weird things he always says that, and then you even mentioned Truman Show, right? Because obviously when
these things come up on those signs. I guess did we talk about the signs already?
No. But I know about it from another show. But yeah, feel free.
Yeah, tell him about the signs. That's what I wanted you to talk about, because it's so like, that's so self-referential, you know. Yeah,
so I guess the first signs were what, like, it was after the show came out, but it was maybe a week or two. What do you think? What was the first sign? Because it happened over the course of a week.
It was a week after. It was almost exactly a week after the show came out.
Yeah, and there were these signs that people were painting on, like, I guess it's fiberboard. They were painting the boards white, and then they were, with a black magic marker, they were writing the craziest stuff. And in one case, it might be like about a guy who has tumors, and a guy actually laid behind this sign, like on the ground, and was like as if he put this sign up there, and it was about tumors or whatever, right? Well, a couple of days later, a sign made of the same material, exactly written in the same way, is taped to the side of the building that is beside our studio, and it's like 10 feet long. Someone with a tape gun pulls up and like tapes this whole thing up there. And it's all about questioning reality and MK Ultra and a bunch of that one is the one that mentions all of the local names. Sam Catron, Lester Burns Jr. What else was on that first one?
Well, that's what I was going to say. It's like, it's undeniable that it mentions Lester Burns. It says, like, call the FBI. This town is a cult, right? And yeah, so it says, this town's a cult. Call the FBI. And then it mentions Lester Burns. Contact attorney Lester Burns. It says call the sheriff. It says Sammy Catron, marks that name out, puts another guy's name, and then a bunch of other names are on the board, like the Commonwealth attorney, and all these people were involved in these like really crazy scandals, right? but also the fact that they mention Lester Burns and Sammy Catron on this same thing a week after the show comes out. It's like, if they listened to the show, did that trigger them? But also, if they didn't listen to the show, are they picking up on like a broadcast of the since like the show is broadcasting this information, right? And somehow, possibly, if they're schizophrenic or or the mental health wise, something is allowing them to. They're not filtering out that information, and so they're picking up on those names. I don't know. It's like, but
over the course of a week, there were like 13 signs, and it ends with someone painting like this stuff on the roof of a house downtown, and this was like a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
Wow.
Final thing, they put on top of that house, call the FBI. This town is a cult. Who are these cyber terrorists? The judges and the cops and the attorneys are all involved. I mean, it's crazy, man. Like
crazy place.
Yeah. So that all happened, and again, it's like, is it that this place allows for that? Because it's like in Hellier, the Amy girl, right? That's sending them these emails. Was she, were they doing something that was allowing them for her to receive this sort of information? Because we found out that there is a Green Man cult, right? There is a group called the Guidonic Order, and they were founded in 1955. And they worship the Green Man and Sunernos, the Horn God, Pan, and they're a group of, they're not Druids, they're not Wiccans, but, they're this magical order. And like I said, 1955, San Francisco, and in 2004, guess where they moved their international headquarters to?
Not Somerset.
Yeah, Somerset, Kentucky, dude. Right? So that group does exist here, right? So did she have a family member that was part of it? Maybe. I don't know. And what I'm saying is that group is not sacrificing children. They're not doing any of that. But somehow that thing that is real here became a part of what she was telling Greg, right? Mm-hmm. And then, she mentions the elevator in that cabin. And it turns out that my next door neighbor, the one that actually told me about the murders to begin with, that started this whole thing, I'm telling them about the show coming out and this cabin and the elevator, and they're like, well, that exists. That's our family's cabin. And then they proceed to tell me that their great uncle built that thing and that it does have an elevator in the bathroom, that it's a medical lift, and it would take them down into the basement, but the basement, it's the same area where all these caves are. So the basement was one of these caves, and they used it for convalescence. And that was the house that apparently Amy had broken into, or the cabin that she'd broken into, that got her put into the jail.
Did they confirm that she had broke into the cabin?
I don't know. I mean, obviously that's why she was in jail. I think was because of that. They'd gotten caught. There's an article in March, the newspaper about it. Yeah. But that was the cabin, right? So that was real. Like there really is an elevator. There really is a Green Man cult. So then it's like, were some of these other things that she was saying, is she filtering the fact that there were magical groups here, that, and probably some weren't always doing good things. Is she channeling some of the stuff that was sort of being broadcast by Pamela,
Yeah.
We Pamela, but we also found there was a total of 5 women in the county who had memories or had stories about the same group, the same cult that they were.
That's crazy.
Right? But it's like, were they all picking up on something? Or were they all broadcasting something? It all also happened at the height of the satanic panic.
Right.
And so, I don't know. I don't know.
It's like, if you were to listen to any one of them, you're not left with the impression that they really did, that like these things really happened. You think that they believe they happened, but it's missing a lot of like the detail or the sort of like qualities you would expect in a recollected memory like that, Mm-hmm. I don't think there's anything behind the memory of it other than the association with the place that must be somehow psychically connected.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned that, you wonder if this Amy woman was, somehow channeling into this. She mentioned like were they in a camper or a tent or something? I don't remember, but her and her boyfriend.
The first email she said they were on the lake in a camper.
Okay, so her and her boyfriend are in a camper by the lake. Forgive my French here. They were getting it on, right? Like, it's just human nature. And I don't know a whole lot about sex magic, but I know that, that energy does tend to attract things. And it's really crazy is I worked with a guy. Well, he was actually taking my place at this job. I was only there for a few months and I got a better job. I was training my replacement. And he told me this story. We were just sitting outside, like bullshitting one night. Him and this girlfriend that he had in high school, he was an older guy. He said they were necking, out, by this woods, like in the area. And he said he saw something out of the corner of his eye, and they looked out of their car, and they saw a satyr.
Oh, really?
Where was that?
Sex energy. That was here where I live.
Oh, wow. That's
weird. I didn't even just right now have that like realization. I've been trying to get a hold of the guy for years, every once in a while, just to see if he had any other weird stuff to say. But he's an older guy. He's not really online a whole lot, I don't think. But maybe there is something to that. Maybe she was channeling something. The whole reason that she even, got on the path that she found herself on was because they were, having sex out in the woods.
So that's a good point, man. I hadn't thought about that. That's interesting. Because, I mean, if it is true that groups like the Baker Ball were here, a lot of people, Marco was even talking about the fact that, it creates these vortices of sorts with little eddies of energy and you can recharge them, accidentally, events, someone being murdered. There's a guy that was burned alive in a truck, immolated in a truck outside one of the caves that Hellier went into, right? And that's an unsolved murder here in town. A very high, which was, and it's things like that. It's like with the history of violence here, that it's a chicken or egg thing. Are the intense geomagnetic fields causing people to be more violent? But then that higher level of violence is throwing off psychic energy that is feeding into a larger structure that was sort of built by people practicing magic here,
Yeah.
Or I don't know, man. I mean, it's just like, what direction do you go with this stuff? Because there's no way for us to really. Every step that we are taking right now is a guided step. Everything that's like, it's still playing out, and Darian and I are, like I said, I was telling you, and after we get off the air, I'm going to tell you this thing that happened to us yesterday, but it's another thing where it's like, it's whatever this is that we're interacting with, it's interacting with us in a very, like, personal and specific way, and seems to be guiding us, but only through our interaction with it, and the things that are appearing are so personal, it would have no meaning to anyone else.
Yeah.
And that's why I get into the whole second order cybernetics thing and this concept of the observers and, observational reality. And I do think that's a part of that. When you think about magic and magical systems, those are systems of control, the control of reality, but they're systems of control, and rituals ultimately are systems of control. And that's what cybernetics is understanding how systems and control within systems work. And so, magic is a form of cybernetics. Lots of things, social engineering. And so, I don't know, man. I mean, it's just, it's such a strange story. It's one of those weird things that it's kind of unbelievable to find yourself in the midst of. I don't know.
I've kind of been circling on the sort of the information angle to it, because I think that if we are in sort of an information super system or something like that, then we would be able to detect it in fluctuations of information. Like there were in the same way that we would see a synchronicity that's personal to us, there would be these sort of micro synchronicities that are leaking out in some way. And so I think we've been focusing a lot on that lately, and with the channel bot stuff that we've been working on, I think that's been kind of interesting to see how it's being affected by people and people are affecting it. That's been talk about that for a minute, Nathan.
Yeah, so obviously we started up the Liminal Lodge was, after we put the show out, because we wanted to put all of our research out there, and we're in the midst of doing that. Like, I'm getting ready to put all the newspaper articles that we've pulled, just trying to organize them so it makes sense, because there's just hundreds and hundreds of newspaper articles. But I wanted to really get that out there so that people can see our research. Darian's designed this software called Nautilus. That's a data mining software, and we're trying to get that where folks in the lodge can help us research this stuff and even put their own information into it. But the Liminal Lodge is sort of our Patreon. Anybody that wants to support the show or join sort of the investigation, definitely check that out. But so one of the things too that Darian has developed is this thing that he calls Channel Bot, and it is it uses the Book of the Law of Crowley and uses quantum random number generator, sort of like the Randomnautica stuff, but and uses that to you can set your intention, you can focus on that intention, and then start channeling, and then it will run through all of the words it goes through 1,000 words in the Book of the Law, and is measuring these entropic thresholds of information. And so your intention and your consciousness is, if it's focused enough on this, the theory is that it will reduce the entropy, which means it's less random, right? And that's when a word pops up. And so it heavily involves the observer interacting with that to reduce entropy. But it's crazy. Like he just fixed the mobile version. We've been testing that out the last couple of days. But man, people have gotten some super, super strange messages just the last couple of days.
Yeah, it's I think there's been 40 or 50 screenshots of sessions that people have done. But I think that if we were to guess at the sort of the overall structure of it based on our experience, it's got to be some sort of information system that we're in. And how can we figure that out? And how does, in a sense, you're wanting to, we're trying to get to, the atomic layer of how magic might work or anything, because however we're describing it, whether it's a cybernetic system or whatever is a mental model that we're casting to that, but in some way, if we could just prove that what is happening, then we can sort of explain our own experiences through that, I think.
Yeah, and also too, we talked about it in the final episode of Paranormal, the first season, that it's kind of if this is, the theory that this is somehow sort of a second order cybernetic system, that a lot of paranormal things are functioning on this level, that definitely synchronicities involve, observation and interacting with things, and the system being aware of you interacting with those things. And the more observers that are part of that system, it creates greater complexity. And again, really what we're talking about are tulpas or egregores, these concepts of thought forms. And so part of the liminal lodge thing is if we have a lot of observers, as more people become a part of the group and we're all observing this mystery, and it's crazy too, the depth of research, which that's what we wanted, Darian. I wanted was that once we started this, that people would help us, would show us things that we didn't fucking think of, and it's happened every day. We keep seeing stuff, but it's like you're adding more people that are observers of this system of information, and as it grows in complexity, it begins to interact with those people as well, and I guess the experiences become more and more rich. But it's like if that does occur, if more people begin to observe it and it begins to interact with them, and they're able to report those interactions, then in a sense we're providing proof of the theory that these kinds of things it's like Hellier. Think how many observers did they onboard when that show came out, right? How many people are interacting with that mystery that they're investigating and having all kinds of synchronicities and saying it changed their life and
me.
Right, yeah, and so like that's another one of these information structures that only exists because of Greg and Dana and that team because if you remove them from the story, there's no story. Like they were the initial observers, but now the thing has gotten more and more complex, and there are all kinds of new observers and new groups of people. And this is probably happening all over the place at various levels, of complexity. We just don't know all those people yet. But even like tonight, what we talked about before we got on the air, obviously you're a part of all of this too, right? And it's crazy, and it's like, what's the ultimate goal of all of this, right? And I'm just hoping it's not some trickster element that's really just playing a giant fucking prank on us. But, and maybe that's it. Steven Snyder had this thing. We didn't put it in the show. It's going to be in our extended stuff for the Patreon, but he was like, what if it's some AI? And that there is a system, and the system is aware of the observers in the system, and again, it's just the same thing of saying, does a place affect the people or the people affect the place? You're really talking about this circular loop that involves feedback. And I think all of this, whether we want to talk about something that's, a supernatural level or a level of magic or quantum mechanics or whatever, the way the reality functions, it involves feedback loops. It absolutely does. And I totally believe that this is, that's a major element of this. Now, again, what's this guiding us toward? I don't know. I mean, we've also people have started to reach out to us and also to people that we're working with in the investigation. And so we've heard all sorts of crazy shit, in terms of what's supposed to happen in the next few months and how we're part of some larger thing. But it's like, there are also different stories and they're competing with each other. So it's like, which one's reality? Are they all just fictions? Are they all just different structures that these other people are involved in? I don't know. I mean, that's the thing that's so fascinating about this, man. It's like, and it's such a weird, transformative experience. I mean, it really is this like weird fucking journey that maybe we're never going to find the end of the road. It's just the road that matters, or all the different roads we find. But it's so strange, man. And it's like, I don't know. I don't know how to describe what the hell is happening, but it is happening, and it's strange. But
I have two questions that I want to ask that have come up as we've been talking. One of them might be a little bit personal. If you don't want to answer it, that's fine. But we've talked about being outsiders to the area, looking in on it, and now you've mentioned, you're working with this new software that's basically looking at magic at an atomic level. Are you outsiders looking in on magic, or have you guys been interested in magic like prior to this whole thing?
Oh man, not at all.
Yeah.
I didn't have any interest in magic before. Yeah, not at all. Now, I did have a lot of interest in like spirituality right before this, and that sort of borders on this, I guess. But no, not in any other.
Yeah. People always ask us that too, if we are practicing any magic or do any rituals or, are involved in any ceremonial magic. I've never had any. I actually have a weird personal prohibition to participating. And you know what I mean? And maybe it's my parents, free will Baptist Southern sort of upbringing, you know what I mean? But obviously I'm into a lot of like weird stuff. I went to college and got, I studied philosophy and religion, and definitely, would not, I don't go to church, I don't, I'm not, not a practicing Christian, but I'm definitely not a practicing magician, and,
right.
And I also feel like at this point, if we were to perform magic, it would open us up to, I guess that's the thing. I do believe in magic. Absolutely. And I have a fear that if we were to take it a step in that direction and try to, grab a book, drive out to that area, do a ritual to try to contact something, that we would open up a can of worms that would really be bad.
Yeah, you're probably completely right.
So
maybe you should.
At this point, I think the less that we participate in that, but I'm telling you, man, we don't have to do anything at this point for this shit to just continue to spiral. And that's why it's kind of like just take your hands off the wheel and let the car fucking drift, Yeah. And because if you try to affect it, it's going to fuck it up. You just have to sort of let it carry you in whichever direction it's going to the flow is going to carry you.
So my other question is, I'm sure you guys have, but have you looked back at the genesis of all of this, the moment that you decided to look into these murders, these mysterious murders, and tried to find anything that could have put you on this path, something that motivated you to look into it? And if you have, do you think that was by design?
What do you think, Derry?
I guess you could argue that there's like just a constant flow of rumors about the stuff that happened here in the 90s and stuff. So I guess it's always sort of around you, just in rumor. But I don't know that. Yeah, I don't know. I didn't really have a personal connection to it other than that. I mean, it was just what we were hearing, and then could there have been a cult? That's sort of the angle that we started on, But that was also mostly exaggeration in local rumor. So,
do you want to hear a really personal story that goes behind, like further back a little bit?
I'd love to. I mean, that's up to you.
This is really strange. I think I've told Darian about this before. Again, I'm not like, I'm not a practicing magician. Not I don't go to church. I'm not practicing, Christian, but definitely my background. My family are very pious, very religious people. But were wonderful. My parents let me, when I was 10, 11 years old, I could study, I could read, anything. I could read the Upanishads. Those were available, like everything. It was like explore it all, and then their hope was that I would come back to, saying that, Christianity's the thing. But ultimately it just made me realize that sort of everybody was talking about the same thing, and definitely talking about more so a spiritual connection to reality. This really crazy experience happened when I was working in Lexington. I had a stint working sort of as a forensic accountant for a stock fraud firm. Okay. So I crunched the numbers on stock fraud cases. But, so I was with my boss at the time. We were eating at, Rupp Arena is where the Wildcats play, basketball. And there's a hotel attached to it. And they had this buffet. And he loved to eat at this buffet. And so we were there at lunch. And they have conventions there, because it's such a big hotel, big meeting center. And, we were standing in line. There was this, it was some, Christian church group. There were like a few hundred people in there for some conference, some religious conference. And so we're in line. And this lady is beside me, and she's kind of staring at me. And she kind of looked like the lady from Poltergeist. Like the short little lady that's the
Tangina?
Yeah, right? So she looks, and even like what she's wearing is one of those like crazy, like floral pattern, like one, jumper kind of thing. And she's got these big glasses, and she's really short. And she's like staring at me, and I'm like, hey, how's it going, And she says, do you play music? And I have long hair. I've always had long hair since I was like 12 years old, past my shoulders. And she said, and when people say that, I always assume it's the long hair. You think I play music, long hair. And I was like, oh, no, I don't play any music. And she says, oh, okay. She's like, well, when I look at you, I see all of these words in music dancing around you. Right? And I'm like, oh, okay, cool, And she's like talking to me about this whole aura stuff, which I thought was really weird, And this is back in like 2006. This is like, over 15 years ago. And I get my food, we talk a little bit more, and I go sit down with my boss, and we're eating. And all of a sudden, she appears, she comes over, and she's at a table with a group of people. She comes over, and she's standing there and looking at me, and my boss and I are like mid-bite, like, hello, and she says, she says, Jesus told me to come over here and let you know that you were going to publish something that's important and not to worry and just basically to go with it. He wanted me to tell you that. And I swear if my boss hadn't been there,
man.
I've had a fucking, So then that's it. She's like, he just wanted me to tell you that, just know that that's going to happen. And then she goes and sits back down and continues her conversation. And he looks at me and he's like, what the fuck was that? And I was like, I don't know, man. And that's it. That's the story. But it's like, I've always wondered since that happened, because I've worked on a lot of different, writing things and projects and I've always been like, is this it? Is this the thing we're talking about? And so now it's like with Penny Roll, it's like, is this it? And is that why she saw words and music? Because it's a podcast,
That's
I don't know.
Above a bar, and you do all these music recordings, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know, man, but I've had a lot of weird experiences like that,
Yeah, me too.
And so, yeah, and Darian has too. He's had all kinds of stuff. So it's like, were we headed for this all along? Were we entangled with this? I absolutely believe in quantum entanglement.
Yeah.
Somehow, I don't know. My parents take me on a trip down to fucking Lake Cumberland when I was 6 years old, and somehow I became quantumly entangled with this whole area. I don't know, man.
Well, I think with your story, you've already solved the mystery behind the trickster of the Kentucky anomaly. It's clearly Jesus.
Right. So, but it's like all this stuff is the same thing. It's so. Is it just reality expressing itself through us? I don't know. No one's heard that. You're the only one that I've told that to. So.
Thank you, because that's awesome.
I have delusions of grandeur now, like, oh, I'm supposed to do something important, you know what I mean? But it's like, what is it?
That's the notch above being afraid you're going to disappoint your parents. Like, trying to live your entire adult life, that's a tall order.
Oh, man. I mean, I do think the podcast, I hope that, I really want to get across the message that, honestly, I mean, this is the weirdest fucking time to exist, It's like the Chinese proverb of may you live in interesting times, which was really a curse. It's like, we really live in interesting times. Who would have thought that truly, in all the pop culture movies where 2020 is the fucking year of the apocalypse, that it really would be an apocalyptic year, And it's crazy, but it's like, on top of all of this, it's like this year is a stacking of weirdness, just like Somerset's this, Coffee County. It's like all of these weird things keep happening this year, and then there's this fucking assault on reality by, the president of the United States is telling you nothing is real, everything's fake. And it's like, and that's what I was trying to communicate with the show is that, well, does that mean that this is, doesn't that make it the perfect time to start believing in magic and start believing that things aren't rational, that things happen in a strange way, but that doesn't make them bad. They're beautiful, and it's like if you can open yourself up, right? All paradigms are equally able to compete with one another, mm-hmm. and I just think that's part of why it's like this mystery and the expression of it and our interaction with it could only have happened now. And I honestly think that putting Pennyroyal out any other time, it wouldn't have been received like it has been. It had to be now. And I hope people come away from it thinking, maybe I need to look at my life and the place I live and everything that's happening in a whole new way. And this is the perfect time to start doing that.
Yeah, I agree. I think that if you haven't got that feedback, I think that you will.
It's weird, man. I don't know what.
It's sort of an initiatory mechanism, isn't it?
That is obviously Greg and Hellier were, started talking about that first, about this sort of, were they part of an initiation? But the more stuff, even the thing that we found, the new thing that happened yesterday is about initiation. But really initiation is just it's a new path. That's all it is.
Yep.
And I think that's what we're all supposed to come away with, is that this is the time to start walking a new path, whatever it is, You don't have to be initiated into this experience or into the Hellier experience, but whatever the experience is, whatever the path is that you want to start walking down, do it now.
Yep.
And so
that was my inner feeling coming out of my Hair Raising Horror Week special on Halloween night. I'm thinking this is the perfect year. It's Halloween. It's a blue moon, and time changes. At 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning, whatever. I messaged Marco and I said, I'm signing up for your Patreon. I think there's no better time than now, and I'm going to start studying under your wing. And I have been. And like you said, it's the perfect time. Like, everything is so mysterious right now.
Yeah.
Wow. That's fascinating. Have you, in your brief experience with it, this is since Halloween?
Yeah.
Have you already seen stuff, or does it change your perspective on it? Done so far?
I wouldn't say it's changed my perspective, because I think that happened first. If my perspective hadn't been changed, I would have never reached out to him for that. Furthermore, I probably wouldn't be sitting here talking to you guys right now. I've always had an interest, but it was not something that I thought was ever going to be a part of my life. And then, if you guys have listened to my interview with Lonnie Scott, I had him do a tarot reading, and I'm going to reveal now what my question was should I pursue, a magical path? And the first thing he said to me when he starts pulling these tarot cards was, well, you should definitely do it. Whatever it is, you definitely need to do it, and you need to run and not walk. And I'm like, oh, God, here we go. And even still, I had that little bit of, inner voice saying, are you sure? Are you sure? But then when I started thinking, like, man, this year, and here we are on Halloween, and it's a blue moon, so incredibly rare, and the rarest year that we've ever had, I think it's time. And so I've dipped my toes in. I haven't, performed any rituals or anything yet. I'm, still learning quite a bit, reading a lot. I had one, I guess you'd say like a paranormal type experience, just a few days ago, maybe a week ago. I work an overnight shift, so I try to sleep during the day, which doesn't always work out. And I'm laying in bed one morning, and I hear in the kitchen, like, it sounds like somebody's digging through our cabinets, like, in the pots and pans. And I got up and went in there, and I didn't see anything, didn't hear anything while I was in there. I laid back down, and it started again, and I got up and went in there again. And I'm thinking, maybe we have a mouse, because we live, like, right next to a cornfield, and everybody's been harvesting, and we usually see a mouse or two, this time of year. And I haven't yet, by the way. And so I thought, well, maybe there's a mouse. No, I haven't heard it again since. And I think there was something going on in my kitchen. Other than that, that's all I've had.
That's really strange, man. I got a question for you about the tarot cards.
All right.
I'm going to assume something, but tell me if it's right or not. That you must have had the Hanged Man card in there.
I have the picture of the entire spread that he did on my Facebook. I will send it to you.
Is that one of the cards?
Off the top of my head, I don't remember, to be honest with you. I got the answer that he gave me, and I accepted it before. I haven't really looked back, but I will now.
Well, so the Hanged Man is the card in the tarot for the initiation of the mystic and the pursuit of magic, right?
I'm looking right now on my phone.
That would be wild, wouldn't it?
Yeah, dude, it's really gonna be wild. Especially when I tell you this stuff off the air too. You're gonna be like, "What the fuck?"
Let's take this second to totally blue ball all the listeners. Let's go ahead and close out the show, and then we'll talk about it after.
Yeah, let's do it, man. Let's do it.
Okay. Before we go, where can people find Pennyroyal?
So obviously we're on, I think almost all the regular platforms for podcasting. Apple Podcasts, obviously Spotify. I think it looks beautiful on Spotify. They do a really good job of how they, put the podcasts out there. And obviously you can go to pennyroyalpodcast.com. Check us out on Patreon. Look up Pennyroyal or Liminal Lodge. You'll find us. We'd love to have more people join and be part of the investigation. Those are the places to find us. We're always available too if anybody wants to contact us with any stories or mysteries. We love all those things. So, but definitely check it out, and we just love to hear from everybody and love to hear what everybody thinks. So.
And join the Liminal Lodge. I'm thinking that the Liminal Lodge needs a patio built beside it. I think I'm going to join up whenever we're done.
Oh, that's awesome, dude.
Thank you. Thanks, man.
All right. I've been Jason, my guest, or my awesome guest is what I want to say. Darian West, Nathan Isaac, thank you so much for coming on tonight. And I look forward to talking to you guys in just a minute.
Thanks for having us on.
Yeah, thank you so much.